I struggle to envision that there is going to be sort of like one AI to rule them all, because I think context is king. And so if that's what gives you an edge, every enterprise is going to want to figure out, how do we get our edge? And so all these like sub agents are going to exist that are hyper specialized and the best at what they do at those things. And there still is going to have to be this like orchestration layer.
Hi, I'm Greg Stewart, CEO of MMA Global, the international nonprofit trade association for CMOs who are focused on architecting a new future of marketing.
I'm Rex Briggs, an author, market researcher, measurement inventor, and entrepreneur.
So Rex, listen, we got a really fun one today. In fact, I've been really excited about this because I do think, and you and I've talked a little bit, and I've certainly listened to you on some of the other shows, this is the moment of sort of, I think, I don't know, of real expansion of this. So, those who paid attention, listeners who paid attention to the actual cover of this, we got Wade Foster here from Zapier, who's co-founder and CEO of Zapier. And so if you don't know, everybody, it's a workflow automation platform. And there's a ton of AI to sort of add value for customers. We're going to bring it back to talk about marketers today. We want to see how we apply there. So that's the goal, right, Rex? Makes sense?
Absolutely. And, I was asked for forecasts for what 2025 is going to be about for AI. And a lot of people were saying that this was a year of AI agents. And I said, no, 2025 is not the year of AI agents. It's the year of AI workflows. And next year will be the year of AI agents. And workflows are a much better place to start because you can have some deterministic control over what happens. And it's kind of the if this, then that. And, as chief AI officer at Claritas, I'm a user of Zapier. We also use N8N. I think workflows are really important. So I'm super excited to have Wade here to talk about how he went about building his company and what he's seeing with marketers today. Right. So Wade, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, good. Very exciting. Okay, so Wade, listen, the obvious one, just give somebody a basic, give the listener and remember the marketers, give a basic understand what Zapier does. They're probably not technical people too, so just, keep it down a little bit.
Well, we like to talk about Zapier as the most connected AI orchestration platform. I think to understand that, it's helpful to know where we started. Zapier started as a simple integration tool, and it has this very simple trigger action paradigm. If you get a new email that has an attachment, save it to Dropbox. If a new lead comes in from your Facebook lead ads, save it to Salesforce. That was step one. Step two then was what Rex was talking about, workflows. Okay, hey, we don't want to just do a single trigger and a single action. We actually want to chain things along. So, I get a new lead that comes in from Facebook. Well, how about I also send it to, Apollo or ZoomInfo to enrich it? And then after I enrich it, how about I add it to Salesforce? And then finally, maybe I should ping the sales rep and say, hey, you got a hot lead. So you get a workflow. And now we're in this era, we're adding AI into the mix. And so anywhere along that step of the process, you can now insert intelligence, which is really helpful for working with unstructured data and also generative ideas. So if you want to have a step be write an email, if you want to have it generate a memo, if you want to have it do sentiment analysis, you can insert all these new capabilities into these workflows that was a lot harder in just that workflow alone era, deterministic workflow era.
But wait, if you're inserting intelligence, though, I'm going to assume the listener's a little suspicious. Like, if it didn't know me, didn't know what. How does it know to do actual intelligence insertion of sort of operations around that? It feels like a mystery for the non-AI. Like I'm the opposite of Rex. I know marketing, don't know AI. What?
Well, so I think we've all probably had this experience talking to just vanilla ChatGPT. Yep. If you talk to vanilla ChatGPT, you ask it a question, teach me about marketing, teach me about email marketing, teach me about search marketing. It gives you back the 101 course on that stuff. You're not going to get like cutting edge insights. You're not going to get stuff that's crazy compelling, but you're going to learn. And so that's helpful. The challenge is now you want to go apply that inside your company, but ChatGPT doesn't have any context of what's going on inside your company. And so if you're asking it, hey, can you go generate a campaign for me based on this, this, or this, and you don't give it any context, it's going to come back and you're going to go, that's not really all that good. Like, I can do a lot better. So what do you have to do to get these workflows to actually have intelligence, to be smart? Well, you got to give it context. And this is why I like this word orchestration. So if we use that example again of, we're collecting leads through, Facebook ad platform. So you get a new lead. Well, before you actually want to go hit an AI, you actually want to try and collect a whole bunch of information about that person. So say you got that lead that comes in. Well, the next thing you want to do is let's go do hit an enrichment API. So say Zoom info. So we're going to go collect a whole bunch of more context about that person. All right, let's actually also then go hit our CRM next to see, do we already know anything about this person? We might already know something about the person or maybe the company they're at. Like maybe we know we've talked to their colleague or maybe we've talked to their boss. Let's also go ahead and hit maybe our customer support system. Maybe somebody from them or someone in the company has actually talked to us before and maybe they've got gripes. So we're going to go collect that data. So you can see you're chaining along and just fetching data, fetching more data. And all of this stuff is allowing you, when you go and eventually want to go prompt ChatGPT, or in this case, an OpenAI model, GPT-4o or whatever, and say, hey, I want you to generate a follow-up email to this person. You now have all this context about what you know about this person. And so when you're prompting the AI to go do this thing, you're not prompting it in a vanilla way. You're prompting it in a very specific way. You're saying, all these things I want you to take into account and write that. And the difference in output you get between when you do the vanilla query versus when you do the one that's rich with context, it's night and day.
I love that
best marketers, they're doing what I just described.
I love that you said that way, because I had posted on LinkedIn not too long ago that context is king. It used to be said in the early days of the internet, where Greg and I are old enough to remember content is king. Yes. But it really is context is king now. And what you make possible is the assembly of the context. I mean, in theory, people should have all that data easily organized in a data lake or whatever, but the truth is most people don't. And so where I've used Zapier and workflows like it is to go out and retrieve and assemble different pieces of information from different systems. And, in the enterprise version of Zapier, you can have your single sign-in, so you can actually go retrieve secure information and so forth and pull that together. The issue, I think, for me that I want to ask you about is, I think you're the canary in the coal mine. You're the proxy to tell us how much adoption is really occurring, because when people begin to use zaps, I think as you call them, and do more zaps, then that basically is a good indicator that people are actually putting this into production and using it for useful things. So tell me about what you've seen in the growth of zaps and where you think the business is at, and what do you think's next to scale and grow this faster?
Yeah, I think that we are seeing, I know we're seeing a huge adoption of AI in workflows. That is growing, triple digits year over year for multiple years in a row, is folks using AI inside those deterministic workflows. Now, we also have Zapier Agents, which is a fully agentic system. And the success there is good, but at least today, it is a little bit more limited to narrower use cases, whereas workflow is the type of thing that we see being deployed in, more enterprise production-ready systems. And the reason why is, when you think about how agents work, is agents tend to have access to a bunch of tools. They tend to have a lot of control over what tasks they go do next. And so the challenge they face is each one of those tasks they go do, each one of those things they are being asked to figure out, they're trying to take a guess at what you actually want. And every step of the way is a chance for them to get it wrong. And these AI systems are usually not at the reliability marks that most enterprises care to see. And so if it's a simple task, it's probably okay. Like, it can do one or two things and you're like, yep, good to go. Like, I'm happy on this. And a low risk thing, great, happy with that. But if you're asking it to do 10 steps or 100 steps, every single one of those things is ticking away at the reliability mark, and you're using tokens like crazy. So your costs are ballooning as well as you sort of go through this motion. Whereas if you're taking a more mixed approach where you're saying, hey, I want to do deterministic workflows here and I want to do AI here, if you're really taking the time to break down your workflows step by step by step, you can then actually find yourselves achieving high reliability marks and lowering your overall cost by only inserting AI in the places where you truly need it, and then sticking to classic, deterministic API calls, every step of the way.
Interesting. So Wade, when you say triple adoption or tripling adoption, what I mean, is it because you're starting with 3 people and it's now gone to 9 in 2 years? I mean, I don't know.
We're talking like 250 million AI tasks in the last 12 months or whatever.
Okay.
Okay.
So it really is starting to take off. Do you get a sense that is there a profile of the kinds of marketers that you think are most getting interested in Zapier? I'm not even sure that's a legit question. Like where's the applications? What's the interest? Where are they going? Yeah, whatever you can tell us.
I think the folks that I think are probably have an edge these days are your folks that usually were in like marketing operations in the past. These are the folks that are well versed in email marketing or CRM or like the more technical elements of it. But I gotta say, the folks that really have the edge are the folks that are in those departments, but also are just well versed in marketing strategy or well versed in the fundamentals, because now those folks, they understand the tooling, but they also understand human psychology, and so they have good ideas for how to actually go apply this stuff. Whereas if you have just one or the other, I find those folks are still struggling on one of these dimensions. The folks that are steeped in classic marketing stuff, they have great ideas, but they don't know how to implement it. And the folks that are hey, purely like, I'm just tech, I just stick in the tech, they're doing interesting things, but they sometimes miss why it's not working. They're like, hey, I can't get, I can build this crazy system, but it's not getting me actually any good results. And it's because garbage in, garbage out.
A good example, Greg, that I've seen is like with journey mapping. So if you have someone from social media and you want to basically grab that information and plug and then retarget or respond, some of that is messy and slow. And so that's I think if you just basically look at the journey mapping as a starting point, that's a great place to say, hey, if you haven't tried some of these workflows, give that a try and see what you're manually doing. And I guess my question in that this leads you up into an interesting competition with Salesforce and some of the other companies that have these marketing clouds. How have you seen competing versus cooperating? What do you think that looks like for a marketer as they think about their tech stack?
Well, I think the reality is in 2025, we all have a variety of tools in our tech stack. I think this idea of, one tool to rule them all, it sounds nice in theory, but it just doesn't tend to play out in practice. Most folks have Gong for, customer transcripts. They've got, Salesforce or HubSpot for CRM. They've got another tool that's sending email. They've got another tool for, support. They've got, enrichment APIs that they're using across the board. They've got, an intelligence layer that they're using. Maybe it's an OpenAI or Anthropic or a Google vendor. And so they have a universe of tools. Even the folks that are trying to be minimalistic with their stack still have a variety of tools. And you got to find a way to orchestrate those things. You got to find a way to pull the context from Gong, pull the context from Salesforce into a workflow that enables you to take action on it at the end of the day.
Yep. I think you said that really well, because that you are that glue or really the bridge connecting these different pieces in a really easy, repeatable way. And I like the way that you're thinking about where AI inserts, because there are ones where it's just, first of all, I just have to assemble the context. That's pure workflow. But now that I've assembled it, maybe now I want to use the API for Anthropic to write a response to this angry email to see if I can settle it pretty easily, right? I mean, if that's part of what you're getting back, or detect the sentiment and decide, no, actually this is too angry. Clearly it's coming from Greg Stewart and he's not happy about the service. I'm going to kick it over to a human to deal with it, because he does not like chatbots.
Yeah, because Greg's a New Yorker and he's kind of an asshole, and so you never know what you're going to get there, right? Exactly. Okay. Have I been profiled by OpenAI? AI? I think so. Yeah. Go ahead. Wait. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, like, this exact example is one we've seen a major professional basketball team does, where they're trying to for years they had all this like customer feedback that would come in after games, and concert events and things like that, and they'd come in the form of just like comment cards and survey feedback and all this sort of stuff. And the best they were able to do with it was take action in the aggregate. They summarize all the themes, and they'd say, okay, thematically, we're going to go try and do better at, concessions, or we're going to do better at cleaning our bathrooms, or we're going to do better at, blah, in the aggregate. But now, when they're able to insert this into workflows, they're able to address things at the individual level. So they started running it through the sentiment analysis, and then the critics, they would file into one form, and then they send them into Slack. And then, they have a suite of emoji reactions, ironically, that they will tag the responses with. And depending on the emoji reaction, it triggers another workflow that follows up with the customer. Maybe it connects them to support. Maybe it connects them to, a sales rep. Maybe it connects them to another person. But ultimately, they're able to take these customer comments and treat them at the individual level. And that workflow alone saved them something like 3 full-time headcount. And the magic was they didn't stop there. They said, you know what? We can actually now not only address the critics, we can actually go look at the people who love the game. So, we've got folks that are having a fantastic time in the game. And in the past, we would just be like, okay, great. I'm glad you had a good time. That was it. It would just be a feather in their cap. But now they're able to say, well, what if we could create a 6-star experience for these people? What if we could really knock their socks off? So, they might have like a dad and a daughter that had a blast at their first game or whatever. And so now they tag that thing with emoji and say, you know what, we're going to go send her some swag. So let's send her a link where they can go actually get like a jersey of their favorite player or something like that. Or maybe we could actually get a signed jersey or something. So they're able to take action on this stuff at the individual level, which is stuff without automation, without AI, these are the types of things that marketers dream up. They're like, God, wouldn't it be awesome if we could do that? But they just never get anywhere because it's just not practical to actually go implement this at any amount of scale because it's too costly. But now you can actually do it and create some really incredible stuff.
So Wade, if a marketer wants to employ Zapier, and listen, like we said, we open the door here, like you're fine to kind of sell the product. That's because you are a solution here for what's going on. But it's like, is what's happening here, is it a bunch of individuals within larger enterprises that are finding pieces of marketing to fix? Do you have anybody kind of coming in over the top and using Zapier to really completely transform all of marketing and Uber? And part of let me be clear about what that second part would inquire that, that there's a whole effort by the enterprise to load in its data, to load in all its information, to give a bunch of background that sets the table. So do you have to set the table, or do people just go use it, or both, or all, or kind of walk through that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of both. Is the organizations that I see have the most success. So I would say the most common starting spot when I see a company or marketing department say, hey, we want to do some amount of AI transformation, is they'll start bottoms up. They'll give all their marketers access to ChatGPT or Claude or what have you, and say, go do some stuff.
Yeah. And
usually they're able to have some modest success with that, but they run into that problem we were describing earlier, which is, hey, ChatGPT, vanilla ChatGPT gets you, vanilla output. And these individuals, they're operating at individual level. So they're solving their individual problems. And it's harder for them to step up and say, what, I actually want to reinvent our lead management process. Or I want to reinvent our entire content creation pipeline, our campaign creation pipeline. Those are projects that do require a leader to at least top-down sponsor it. But sometimes they actually have to be like, no, we are actually going to go reinvent how this organization works because it requires thinking about the roles and responsibilities a little bit differently. So usually it starts with that individual level to get people familiar with the tech, get people excited. And then it also takes, a CMO, a VP of marketing, a VP of operations, or somebody like that to say, okay, now I'm going to pick out 1 or 2 areas that I think are strategically important for us to go come in and take a big swing at like reinventing these things. And even when they do that, they're still starting small. Like I think right now, the challenge I'm seeing is everyone is paying attention to these crazy demos you're seeing on social media. And so they're starting there at the finish line and then getting frustrated and being like, it didn't work. Like this whole thing must not work. And the best folks usually start simple. They start with that, like, well, what if I could just get my leads from Facebook into Salesforce? Okay, that's super easy. Like, that's a problem that we can just solve today. Then they go, okay, well, now that they're going into Salesforce, it would be nice if I could enrich them along the way. So, okay, take them from Facebook, hit Zoom Info to enrich, then drop them in Salesforce. Okay, great. Now that we're doing that, what else could we do? And so it kind of starts to stack and stack and stack. And as you go through that process, before you know it, you start to realize we actually have reinvented our lead management process. We actually are doing this way different than we were a year ago. But that progressive approach allows you to stack wins on top of each other, and they're just narrow enough that you can understand, what's possible, where you're getting stuck versus where you actually have forward momentum. And that's when I see the organizations being the most successful. They're kind of taking that bottoms-up empowerment approach. They're combining that with tops-down leadership, and then also starting narrow and expanding out from there.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of thinking about it, because what you've done is you've made it easy to get started with any place in your workflow. I think that the really change that we're seeing because of AI is, in the old days, like especially if you look at like ERP systems, if you decided to go from SAP to Oracle or Oracle to SAP or whatever, that was a massive $100 million plus change, which consultants loved, I'm sure. And it took multiple years because you had to have everything working off of that new enterprise system. But now we're in a world where everything is incredibly accessible to AI. And with Zapier and other workflow pieces, you could go through and you could say, look, I don't want to try to reinvent our whole system. We don't need to change our entire vendor for our CRM system. We just want to change this one workflow. And we're going to get data from two different systems, and we're going to glue it together with Zapier as the basically the glue or the bridge pulling it together. I think the same thing's happening somewhat with Operator and the other ones, where maybe you don't have to rebuild your whole interface. You can actually have AI go in and click all the buttons and pull out the data and extract it for you and do that next step. What do you think that world looks like as things become more and more interoperable, if you will, if you can almost add an AI layer to become your interoperation and you don't have to change whole systems? Does that vision for marketing, to your point, become a lot more best of breed, flexibility, or what world do we get in a year or two from now?
I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Like, I think most of us in AI are still waiting for like a real iPhone moment where, I feel like today we're still very much in like the BlackBerry stage, where it's like the tooling is built for tinkerers. It's built for people who like to geek out and nerd on these things. And obviously it's incredibly impressive what you can do with it, but it still requires like that the user experience, the design delight around these things that the iPhone brought to the table. We're not quite there yet, like at least not in my estimation. So that's like problem one. And I think we all kind of want that. We want this like, easier way of interfacing with the AI and being able to build these systems. And, maybe that comes from just like better, text to workflow or text to app or text to code or whatever type of systems. The thing that has to get figured out is that right now, what we are seeing is the best marketers or the best insert whatever function, they're usually able to build systems by making them very unique to their workflow. And I struggle to envision that there is going to be sort of like one AI to rule them all. Because I think, to your point, Rex, context is king. And so if that's what gives you an edge, every enterprise is going to want to figure out, how do we get our edge? What do we do to have, 1 percentage point or 2 percentage points up on our competitors? And that means they're going to take, whether it's an out-of-the-box model or maybe it's going to be their own model they design, and they're going to customize it to their industry, to their sets of data, to their tools, etc. And then you're going to see that like almost like Russian nesting doll all the way down to the task level where you're going to say, okay, well, this individual marketer who specializes in email has built an agent that is very capable at email. And there's an agent over here that's very capable at search. And there's an agent over here that knows the brand guidelines exceptionally well. And so all these like sub agents are going to exist that are hyper specialized and the best at what they do at those things. And there still is going to have to be this like orchestration layer between all these different tools. And so what has to happen to get to that iPhone layer is you kind of need to find a way for the whatever the interface that humans are operating with to be simple enough, but also rich enough at collecting context to be able to, the AI to be able to delegate it down to all these different things without losing that context at the end of the day. And so that's the gap I see today. And I'm like, how do we solve that?
Yeah, well, you're also talking about the agents, how they work together in that example. Can you, I mean, as you think about how Zapier is working, are you thinking of using agent to agent or MDP? What are you planning on standardizing on, or do you have your own?
Well, wait, before Rex starts throwing in tech terms that nobody in marketing understands, Wade, can I clarify something a little bit there? Were you, and maybe this is a dumb question, I can't really tell, but were you saying that marketing is not standardized enough from company to company to company? There's elements of marketing that aren't standardized enough. You know, like in other words, if I, as a major marketer, have, I don't know, an email system that runs email delivery for me and so on, I can't put that in somebody else because they're different? Or are you saying that the companies are different in how they take all those individual pieces of marketing and stitch them together? I'm not sure if I was 100% clear if that's even the right question.
So if I understand you, like I do think probably a good way to think about this would be to think of templates for email marketing.
Okay.
You know, most companies, I grew up in email and kind of standard practice, like if someone subscribes to your newsletter, send them a welcome email. So every email marketer knows, hey, we're going to send a welcome email.
Right.
Now, what goes in that welcome email is unique to every single company. And, you know, some marketers might say, we'll just take the out-of-the-box welcome email that the, email marketing vendor provides, and we'll just say that's good enough.
Yeah.
But the best email marketers say, that's not actually good enough. Like, what we're really going to do is deeply understand our customer base, deeply understand why they're subscribing, what offers do I want to give them, how am I priming the pump to help nurture those folks, and so I'm going to customize that to our world. So the act of sending a welcome email, sure, that's standardized across the industry, but what you actually put in that welcome email, that's where marketers, the best marketers, do actual extra work to make it really good.
Okay, so I think the question I'm trying to get to in that, and then I do think Rex's question comes in right after this, I think, if I'm understanding right. So you could write an AI that puts it at an intelligence level that says, okay, now don't just send a stupid email. Go out to some repository of how our tone, how our brand guidelines. Let's assume that brand guidelines sometimes are just visual, but let's say that there's a tonality guideline somewhere. Go pick from that. We like to be snarky. We like to be funny. We like to be serious. We like to be formal. Whatever it is, pick from that, insert that, and adjust it. So that could all be standardized by every company. I mean, listen, I think marketing, part of where I'm going here, Wade, and it's my job as a trade association, right? Like, I think we should standardize some of this stuff. There's a little bit too much sort of derivation going on out there that creates challenges and trouble. So you standardize that. And then the sort of unique layer that you capture value comes from both the tonality, the way in which you present yourself, so to your point, and then it's how it gets stitched together across all these different operations that sort of becomes very unique.
Yeah.
Rex, I don't know. Go ahead,
like in that case, like the way you would solve what you just described today is you would probably create a custom GPT that is
totally,
has your sort of like voice, tone, brand guidelines all sort of encoded in the prompt and says like, hey, every time you talk to me, I want you to answer this way. Yeah. Which is different from vanilla ChatGPT, where if you were to sort of ask it that way, you're going to get one answer that's, it probably is like, you're like, it sort of did the right thing, but it's not us. Like, it's not, doesn't who we are. So you kind of have to do that extra work to make it the way you want it. And so that you can do today, but that's the kind of stuff that has to happen to really make these systems work inside of an enterprise. It's this like next degree, the last mile of customization that really gets us to go, okay, now this AI is operating in a way that I'm comfortable turning it loose on these problems. It's not going to come in as a, first year intern and just feed me the basics. Like this has to be good.
Yeah, and that does come back to the question about how do you have agents work together, because you can have a situation where you have your email agent knows their tonality, but it needs to interact with an audience agent or which goes up and looks at information on the audience and says, okay, this is Greg, or this is Rex, or this is Wade. And therefore, how do I want to speak to them differently? Because they're different ages, they live in different areas, they maybe have different product histories and so forth. And so you have an AI agent that's trying to curate all that information about what's my history on this person, and then how do I share that with the email agent so it knows what to do. I mean, you could just, in some cases, you could, maybe that's just a context dump that Zapier hands over to the email agent that is writing the final welcome email. But it seems like the more and more agents you get, the harder and harder it is to make sure that they know how to pass information back and forth. That's really what the MDP, which is Anthropic's model, which OpenAI has also said they're going to go with. Google has their own, and there's a few others out there. But I think that to me is the thing I'm now starting to run into. Now that I've already tinkered enough, I now need these, all these different agents we've created. We need to get them to start working together.
Yeah. And I think you hit on one of the current challenges that like folks on the cutting edge are facing. And there's basically like two ways to solve it. The first is, you can have these agents sequenced inside of a deterministic workflow. Yeah. And this, sort of forces the AI to work in a very particular way. And if you're able to articulate your workflow in that very specific way, this is probably the best way to go about it, is you'll get the kind of outcomes that you want. If you can know that, like, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, this all follows this sequence, great, you should do it. Agent 1, scores the sentiment. Agent 2 decides, do we go this direction or that direction? Agent 3 generates an email for all these things. Agent 4 then, so you can kind of like stage each of those along. The challenge, though, is that you don't always know, well, step 1, step 2, is it always going to be in that order? Or is it sometimes going to be in a different order? Maybe actually what I just want to give this agent is an access to a bunch of tools. And whenever it's the right time to choose a particular tool, I want it to just know, go grab this, go work with this sub-agent because they're the ones that are good at this thing. And so that's what products like Zapier agents do, is you're able to have a master agent that goes and interacts with all these sub-agents. The limitation of that today is that the more sub-agents that exist, the more tools that exist, it has a tendency to get more confused. It just is like, there's just too much context. There's too many things going on inside of this. And so I get it wrong more often than not. So if you're able to be relatively narrow, that approach can work today. But if you're wanting to build this like super agent that's got everything, I still think we're a little bit away from being able to sort of pull that off.
So you think by 2026 estimate for that's the year of the agent, this is the year of the workflow? Is still
maybe.
Right.
I mean, it all sort of depends on, the model advancements and how good these things get. And the pace of progress has been incredible. So right now, I'm not sure I would bet against OpenAI or Anthropic or Google. Like, these folks are deploying billions of dollars to make this stuff really, really good.
Well, hey, Wade, just for the listener who doesn't know, what does model advancement mean, just so they're clear?
Well, so, if you use OpenAI, you may be familiar with that like model picker that's up in the top left. And, out of the box, I think today it sort of defaults to 4.0, which 4.0 is a relatively cheap and relatively fast model. And so it's good for like most tasks. If you're just asking like, hey, tell me about this or tell me about that, it generally does a good job at that. Now, oftentimes what you see is folks want to do deep research. Well, if you want to do deep research, you have to switch to, you probably want to switch to like O3 Pro. Like, I think that's probably the best model for doing deep research. And then for that, when you prompt it, it goes off and thinks for like 10 minutes often. And the output that it gives you is also a lot denser, a lot better. And so there's certain topics where you're like, hey, I want you to really give it a go with this. I want you to really go deep. And that's in those situations, you might go ask it to do that. And so, what you see all these frontier research labs doing is working on how do they go improve these models. And with each model, they're usually optimizing for like slightly different things. Like, is this going to be a, fast model?
Yeah.
Is this going to be a thinking model? Is this going to be high cost, low cost? Like, they have these constraints and these vectors on which they're trying to optimize with. And, they're offering, these choices to us as consumers to say like, well, hey, we've got some models that are better on certain dimensions than others. And you might pick and choose one based on your preference for those things.
Right, which is the thing that just happened. Right.
Yeah.
And the thing just happened with Grok, and their sort of intelligence sort of orientation to it, which, I don't know, you tell me if that's true or not, or think what OpenAI is going to do with ChatGPT 5, right?
Yeah. And it sounds like with ChatGPT 5, what they're trying to do is actually hide the model picker to the user, where they're going to try and do a more intelligent routing to say, hey, user, you don't actually have to figure out which model you need to use. Because that's certainly one of the things that I think is a burden for like people who aren't like super nerds following along every single detail. They're just like, hey, can you just pick the best model for me, like, and just give me the best answer? And I think what rumors would suggest is maybe that's what ChatGPT is going to do. I don't have any inside information. It seems like that's where they're heading with GPT-5.
Yeah, and even to add more insult to injury on the process of picking is like some models like 4.0 can create images, but 4.5 can't. So if you have a workflow and it switched over to you, all of a sudden it's like, I can't create that image. You want it to create an ad. You gave it a bunch of examples of ads. We actually have an example like this at Claritas, where with the work we're doing with you, Greg, with CAP, where it will create for Major League Baseball, there are different other versions of ads it should consider. For some reason, the model switched over 4.5, and all of a sudden it forgot how to do that. And we had to go back and force it to say, no, you must use this model. And so that's a big burden for non-technical users. And to your point, if we really want to have that iPhone moment, iPhone was all about simplicity and the fact that you could give it to a child and they could figure out how to use it.
Well, there was two things with iPhone, though, right? Was simplicity and the unification of sort of across devices and the opportunity to do that. But the big issue is that they didn't even see coming was that the apps was the answer. We didn't know what hey, Wade, do you want to make a guess what the killer app is for AI? I've had this conversation at the board level a little bit. Like, what is the killer app? Because I don't know that for sure we've seen it yet. Maybe we've seen it and it's here. We just haven't identified it such.
Well, I mean, if it's here, it's chat is the obvious answer. ChatGPT is 800 million active users at this point in time.
It's crazy.
So it's hard to say that chat would, if it's here, that chat isn't the answer to that question.
Yeah. Okay.
It does feel like that there is something else coming though.
Like, doesn't it?
There's
Yeah,
new
I agree.
types of apps that haven't been built yet. To your point, like, Uber came along, a couple years after the iPhone. Tinder and swiping came along a few years after, and it was, these newer and ideas that were like using mobile as like a first order primitive, where it's like, we can go do something different.
And I think it was Uber that reset for marketing because Uber basically said, they basically taught the consumer, I want to know where the goddamn car is. I want to know what time it's getting there. I want to know who the driver is. I want to know all the information. I want trust built into the system. I mean, what they accomplished that reset then for every other marketer's digital opportunities was dramatic. I mean, there were a lot of conversations. By the way, the MMA used to be the Mobile Marketing Association. So we spent a lot of time, and Uber's on the board now and was then. So we've spent a lot of time talking about what do these revolutions mean for how we're having to rethink marketing. Interesting.
Yeah. So it does.
You feel
like
something else coming, though. You feel something else coming. What direction do you think you should gesture towards if we were to expect? Some people are talking certainly about glasses or the speech to text interfaces, or again, those don't feel like they're enough yet to me.
Well, when I think about my own usage of AI, probably the most significant difference I have in my day-to-day work is that I am using voice a lot more.
Okay. Interesting.
I am finding myself talk into these voice transcriber tools to help with a whole host of tasks. And most of the tools I played with, they're still a little kludgy, where I'm just like, it's good, It's good enough that I've meaningfully shifted my own behavior. But I think for most people, it still feels like there's a little too much friction to it.
It is, especially the voice one. I mean, Wade, I don't know if you're married like Greg and I are, but I start to ask ChatGPT a question using a speech text. I'm done answering the question. Then my wife begins to add on, and it doesn't know the difference between my voice and her voice. So it keeps recording, keeps going, whatever. I'm like, and she doesn't like me when I tell her to stop talking because I want the AI to finish.
Oh, you brought a whole new dynamic to Menage a Trois there, kind of, Rex, and sort of like the conflict that exists between you, your wife.
I can't use a female voice for it anymore. That creates jealousy. It's all kind of.
Well, we're going to have to ask OpenAI for a therapy model that's like,
100%. Wait, it's very funny. Like, I'm actually listen, I travel. So I got in a situation funny one with my wife the other day. Like, I've traveled international all the time. I've traveled for years. I'm 3 million miles on United. Like, I know travel. I know what to do. So I gave her we were going to India. I gave her the answer to something, and she wasn't really sure. I go, well, if you don't believe me, I says, go put it in ChatGPT. ChatGPT gave her a different answer, and I thought, oh my God, they just want the whole balance of power. Like it all just shifted in her direction. ChatGPT gave her more inside information that I had with better reason. I thought, I'm screwed now, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is a thing. Like, you kind of remember that, when Google was really starting to gain popularity, the concept of, well, there was that website, Let Me Google That For You,
yes,
where people would ask you a question.
I remember that.
Send them
Let
me Google it.
It was very funny.
It definitely feels like we're kind of in a similar wave with ChatGPT and other like tools where it's like you ask a question, it's like, well, what did you ask ChatGPT? ChatGPT can just tell you and probably tell you better than I can.
It's going to rewrite. It's going to rewrite power dynamics. Hey, Wade, here's a really good one for you though. So listen, I'm kind of hearing you, and this is kind of the role of a trade associate like me to sort of help all marketers advance. Like our job is to help marketers advance in AI. The board's putting a lot of pressure on us to try to be more helpful. Okay. Did I kind of hear you indicate that you have a series of templates built for marketers? Like, is that the kind of thing that can turned into sort of industry standardized? I mean, there'll be derivatives, as you say. We need to keep, but I kind of hearing you say you guys have gone to that, and just listening, you got to have that thinking process.
Yeah, we have a whole template library. We're adding it out. I think it should be 100 times, 1,000 times the size that it is today, but it already has some of the most popular types of use cases that folks might want to use. If you want to do a research template that helps you do research on like your upcoming sales calls, if you want to do a lead management, lead prospecting type use case, the one that we've used kind of several times here in this discussion, we have templates for that. We have templates for hiring and recruiting. So I know marketers tend to do some hiring and recruiting, so it can help you with.
There's even a higher order of sort of journey mapping for them that maybe takes you even outside of the process of just the AI, because the template's only going to do what the technology can do, but then there's outside processes to that. That'd be kind of interesting. Yeah, where do you put it in? Where do you have intelligence? That would be interesting to map that out for people to give them a sense to sort of advance their knowledge.
Yeah, we have a product called Canvas that works a little like these mind mapping tools. The cool thing about Canvas is it can expose all your automations and all your products and update in real time, but you can also include static nodes. So if you want to map out your whole workflow, even if it doesn't connect to Zapier, you can still do that within Canvas and sort of have a visual representation of how does this end-to-end system work inside of my company. And then, the parts that the perk is if you do some of those things on Zapier, that aspect of the map will self-update. So as you make changes and edits to how the parts that use Zapier work, you don't have to worry about coming in and updating. I think that's one of the challenges of some of the old school, process software is that, the moment you sort of complete the diagram, well, it's probably outdated the next day when you decide to change the system. And so it requires somebody to constantly be coming in and updating the documentation on how does our internal system work here. And so Canvas kind of helps with that, especially if you're using Canvas alongside Zapier.
Wow. That was a big unlock. I hope the listeners stick around long enough to hear that.
Yeah, we are doing that, and I think we're getting towards the end of the show here. So we'll maybe ask one or two other questions, but to share an anecdote, the mind mapping or the process mapping is incredibly important. I mean, just to make sure to Greg's point, to make sure people understand we've been in our Decoding AI for Marketers training that we do with MMA, next one coming up in October. We spend time going through the process maps and showing how you can do the workflow maps and so forth. But maybe we'll connect up with you and see if we could or should demo Zapier as an example for it, because I've been looking for something that would make it a little bit more relatable to people. Like, how do you really do this quickly? And the fact that you already have templates and workflows already set up, that people can see those really quickly, they can swap in, what they're doing or not doing, that would be a huge benefit. I don't think marketers oftentimes think about how much what they do needs to be thought of as a recipe and with steps and procedures and ingredients, and that's been a little bit of the metaphor we've been using. And I've been wondering if you have maybe a better metaphor or different way of thinking about it, or what advice you'd give to marketers and starting on their process journey.
Yeah, I do think this is a challenge. I think as an industry, marketers are probably first and foremost known for creativity. And, that sort of, I guess it's what left brain thinking is where, we tend to spike as an industry. And the corollary to that is we're maybe not known so much for the process and systems and consistency and things like that. Don't put us in a box. We don't want to be in a box, right? And so I do think the marriage of those two is where you do get pretty big impact. When you figure out how can I encode like creativity inside of a system.
Yeah.
Step by step by step, that's how you are able to do
Yep.
marketing at scale, which is really important these days. That's what everybody's trying to figure out how to do. So what options do you have? I think, one, the classic answer would be, well, build a diverse team. Have someone on the team that is a systems thinker, have somebody on the team that's the creative person, and put them in a box and say, hey, you're going to go figure this stuff out together. If you don't have the budget, though, to do that, or if you're operating with a small team, what might you do? And I do think this is where ChatGPT or Claude itself can help you with these things. So you can say, hey, I've got a task to do this. Can you help me come up with a plan for it? Can you help me break it down into steps? And, you can even say, can you break it down into steps so that I could build something on Zapier for it? And it will say, okay, yeah, you want this as step 1, step 2, here's a trigger, here's the action, here's the next action, etc. And so it can help folks who are maybe not as comfortable breaking things down into the discrete steps that maybe like a profession like engineering, for example, is maybe more known for that as being a common skill. And that can help you kind of bridge the gap to build these bring these two skill sets together and get kind of the best of both worlds.
Well, that's a great note to end it on. And that's it for this episode of Decoding AI for Marketing. I'm Rex Briggs.
And I'm Greg Stewart.
Be sure to catch all our episodes, plus subscribe, follow, rate, and review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can check us out on YouTube, and you can get transcripts and more information on our website, decodingaiformarketing.com.
And to learn more about MMA and membership options or any understanding around AI, given we have a think tank on this, please go to MMAglobal.com. Thanks for listening. Wade, we can't thank you enough for being here. Really, honestly, probably the most helpful episode we've had so far.